I can tell that everyone has a full stomach now, and I think I've got so much pressure because I have to present following a very nice lunch and following the productivity SA presentation. So don't expect too much, but I'll try and still succeed. So my name is Mielani Olivia Maringa, and I'm from TUT. I'm doing a master's in engineering management, the structured program. So before you, I'll be presenting a summary of my mini dissertation under the title called Framework to Improve Manufacturing Capacity of Small Medium Enterprises Suppliers for the Rail Car Manufacturing Industry. So you can tell that SMEs are the order of the day today. We can move to the next slide. Right, now, is it better? Yeah. Okay, so that's what my presentation is going to outline. You can go to the next slide. So if you see in front of you there, you will see two generations of rail cars or trains. The one that you see on the left-hand side is the one that is very popular, but soon it won't be very popular because you will see more of the one on the other side. And if you see the difference in years between the two rail cars that you see there, it's more than 30 years. So it's like seeing someone who's maybe 35 years old and a 2-year-old baby. That's how huge the gap is. It was already explained that in South Africa, the metro cars or the trains were not done in the past, and for that reason, the supply base was lost. So therefore, there's a company that I'm doing a case study on, which is referred to as Company X, which you all probably don't know about. So Company X has a vision to lead the revitalization of the South African railway sector. And then, as already said by some of the presenters, that SMEs are big in South Africa. They actually contribute a lot, however, they are not doing well. And some of the challenges that are faced by SMEs, as detailed there, is finance, technology, skilled labor, market access, and market information. Another thing that SMEs are experiencing is lack of entrepreneurial zeal, as was explained in the previous presentation, capacity, know-how, and experience. These are just some of the challenges that SMEs are facing. So the problem statement for my research is that Company X is experiencing poor supplier performance from their SME. Company X is experiencing poor supplier performance from their SME suppliers in terms of deliveries, which creates delays in manufacturing of the train and also the related services, which is servicing and other things. So Company X measures performance of the suppliers using key performance indicators or KPIs. So the one for delivery is measured under on-time in full, which we normally call it OTIF. So if you see on the graph below, it's not pointing, but then on the bar graph below, it has a number of SME suppliers that were sampled out for the center. Oh yes. So on this graph that you see here, you will see there's a gray line here which shows the OTIF target or on-time in full target, which should be 85%. But you will see that majority of the suppliers performed under that target, which was for fiscal year 2019-2020. So about 35% of the SMEs didn't meet the OTIF target for that year. Next, it's not going through. Okay, so to support more of the case that we are presenting, we have looked at all the suppliers that Company X had in that financial year. And if you see the blue part, the majority of the suppliers that did not do well fall in that blue part, and those are SME suppliers. And the smaller portion are the suppliers that will say they are bigger suppliers. And then again, we'll look at the next graph, which shows the supply by region. So we try to look at to understand that is the problem of late delivery because the supply may be situated far in South Africa. But then if you see the blue part there, which is the bigger chunk, about 76%, those are suppliers that are in Gauteng, and Company X is located in Gauteng. So we can safely say that distance is not really an issue because there are other suppliers that are as far as Cape Town that are doing very well. And then again, we looked at the suppliers again in terms of what is it that they are providing for the train. The train is divided into 3 different commodities. So we have a commodities that we call metallic. So those are the parts that goes outside the car body shell. And then we have a commodity that we refer to as interiors. So this is the commodity that's looking at all the parts that goes inside the train, chairs and lights and other things. And then there's another commodity that we call subsystem. So that's a commodity that looks at, I'll say, the complex part of the train, the braking system, the couplers, and all the complicated stuff. But when you see the performance in terms of commodities, it's almost similar. So the problem is across the board. You can't really fold it in one commodity. Next slide, please. So the aim and the objective of this research is that is to develop a framework which will help to improve the delivery performance of Company X SME suppliers in the rail car manufacturing industry in South Africa. And this is how we're going to achieve the aim. First, it will be to identify the factors that led to poor delivery performance for these active suppliers in that particular fiscal year, 2019-2020. And the reason why we chose that particular fiscal year is that it's more representative because, as you might know, the Company X didn't start a long time ago. And then after 2020, you know that there was COVID. So 2019 was a year which was more representative. And then the next objective is to identify the gaps that are in the supply chain management system and establish the relationship between the factors and the supply chain management system. And then lastly, it will be to propose a framework which, when implemented, will assist to improve the delivery performance of these SME suppliers. Okay, and then the methodology that was followed in this research is qualitative research approach, because we are looking at data in order to interpret concepts, not depending heavily on numerical measurements. And the data was historical data which was collected from the portals of supplier of Company X, where we have checked on their supplier performance portal and also on the audit portal. And then purposeful sampling technique was used because judgment and experience was required to be able to choose the suppliers that fit the aim of the study. And then a qualitative content analysis was used to analyze the data, which will follow. Next slide. Okay, so on the objective number 1, this is the result that was found. So when suppliers are being late each and every month, they need to give, there's an investigation that goes through to understand what made them to be late. So the reasons were put together in a Pareto. As you know, that the Pareto rule says that 80% of the problems comes from 20% of the causes. So if you see there on top, it shows the vital few contributors that causes the suppliers to be late, where the first one there is supplier poor productivity, the next one is poor sub-supplier management, supply answers, and delivery schedule changes. Then next, on the second objective, we were checking the supply chain system of these SME suppliers using the audits that Company X has done. And then again, they were correlated to, they were summed up on a Pareto to understand which chapters on the supply chain audit were failed mostly by the suppliers. And then the vital few, the first one being standard time and capacity management, followed by planning system, followed by procurement supply management, poor procurement supply management, and poor production planning. Then continuation of objective number 2 was to, yeah, that's fine. So objective number 2 also was to look at the relationship between the contributors that we've seen in objective number 1 and the gaps on the supply chain system. And then we have used the relationship matrix. So if you see at the bottom there, the ones that I've circled are the highest one. So meaning that there's a high relationship between supplier poor management and production planning and standard time and capacity management. Again, another contributor that came high is sub-supply issues. So meaning that the problem that the suppliers are having with their own suppliers. And then the last one is delivery schedule changes, meaning that Company X, when they give delivery schedule to their suppliers, they tend to change it a lot, and then suppliers are not able to plan. So those were the 3 main ones that came up top to say these are the major contributors to this problem. And then next, it's the capacity framework that was produced. So I'll just talk about it very high level. If you see, this framework is divided in a 3-tier system. So not only looking at Company X because it's having problems, or only looking at an SME supplier because it has problems, but it also looks at the suppliers that supply the SME supplier, which I will call tier 2 suppliers. And then if you look at it very high level, there is 3 management systems that we need to take care of based on the results that we've seen in the previous slides, that procurement supply management between SME suppliers and Tier 2 suppliers needs to be enforced, and also the demand management between Company X and SME supplier needs to be enforced. This is driven by the delivery schedule. And then also, Company X needs to communicate clearly with the SME suppliers in terms of their performance or audit. And then again, if you look at the Company X, those are the KPIs that they need to look at. So for the purpose of this study, what we're interested in is more on the capacity, but things like NCRs, things like late payments to suppliers can impact capacity, because the supplier can have all the resources that they need, but if they are not paid, they will not be able to deliver. Or also if their NCRs, if they deliver parts that are defective, then Company X won't achieve what they need to achieve. Then, so in conclusion, what we have seen is that the contributors, or the vital few contributors to delivery performance, which is delivery schedule changes, supplier poor productivity, and sub-supplier management issues, we said we'll manage them using the following management system. So the delivery schedule changes should be managed with the demand management system. Supplier poor productivity will be managed with standard times and capacity management, and sub-supply issues should be managed with procurement supply management. So from literature, we found that there are 3 key inputs to capacity planning from that author here. And when you look at these management systems that we have and those 3 key inputs, there's a correlation, because demand management goes hand in hand with the workload. So the supplier needs to know how much the customer is going to need, when they're going to need it, so that they can do their workload management. And then again, system capacity. The supplier needs to know how many people, how many machines, how many shifts they need to work to make sure that they meet the demand. And the last one is the service level, to know that the supplier needs to know that at what point do I deliver according to the service level agreements that suppliers and the main company should have. And then with that, sorry, you can just go back a bit. Okay, so with that, when you have those 3 key inputs to capacity planning, it gives you a good capacity plan. And then with a good capacity plan, there are benefits to it. The one that we are most interested in this study is on-time delivery, which in case of Company X, they refer to it as OTIF. So when capacity is planned very well, you do reap the reward of getting on-time delivery. Then, next one. So the significance of this study is that the chief purpose of capacity planning is to meet the current and future level of capacity requirements at the minimal wastage. So meaning that planning capacity accurately is very critical for a company like Company X, which is depending highly on ramp up. So Company X didn't start planning to build so many trains a year. Each and every year they have a target to make sure that they meet the requirements. So material, as you know, and equipment costs are increasing because everything is expensive these days. Technologies are changing. We have seen what was presented earlier, that things are changing. And also the most important factor is that companies are also demanding faster services and products. And this is what it's aiming to achieve, that when you increase the capacity or improve the capacity, then the buying firm, which is Company X in this case, will also get what they need on time. Thank you.